Alien Queen thought the climax was a myth until she met a human male. The grand banquet hall of the Emerald Palace glowed with an ethereal light, golden ornaments catching the flicker of 1,000 floating candelabras. Captain Justin Sterling adjusted his stealth suit's collar, feeling slightly out of place among the sea of elaborately dressed alien dignitaries. His light blue eyes scanned the room, taking in the marble columns and crystalline chandeliers that cast rainbow patterns across the gathered crowd. "Admiring my taste in decor, Captain," a melodious voice purred behind him. Justin turned to find Queen Ariadne herself, her vibrant green skin almost luminescent in the soft light. Her flowing light green hair cascaded down her back like a living waterfall, and those large emerald eyes seemed to pierce right through him. The exquisite tiara adorning her head sparkled with each graceful movement. "Your Majesty," he bowed slightly, a roguish grin playing at his lips. "I must say, this celebration rivals even the greatest pleasures I've known." The Queen raised an elegant eyebrow. "Oh? And what pleasures might those be?" "Well," Justin leaned in conspiratorially, his stubbled jaw nearly brushing her ear, "on Earth we'd compare this level of grandeur to what we call a climax, the height of physical ecstasy." Several nearby alien nobles tittered nervously, but Queen Ariadne's expression remained coolly amused. "Ah yes, the famous human climax. Nothing but an exaggerated myth, I'm sure. For my people, reproduction is purely biological, a clinical process devoid of such primitive responses." Justin's grin widened. "Your Majesty, I assure you it's very real. For humans, it's like touching divinity itself. A moment of pure transcendence." "You speak with such conviction, Captain," Ariadne mused, her eyes glinting with curiosity. "Perhaps you'd care to elaborate on this phenomenon in a more private setting?" Before Justin could respond, 2 hulking guards in ceremonial armor appeared at his sides. The Queen gestured gracefully toward a hidden door behind her throne. "My personal chambers should provide adequate privacy for such an educational discussion." The guards escorted Justin through winding corridors of polished stone until they reached an ornate door. Inside, the Queen's private chambers were a study in luxury. Silk drapes, plush furnishings, in a balcony overlooking the capital's glittering skyline. Queen Ariadne entered moments later, having changed into a more comfortable but no less alluring gown that accentuated her lithe figure. "Now then, Captain, tell me more about this climax of yours?" Justin's eyes traveled appreciatively over her form. "Your Majesty, some things are better demonstrated than explained." "Is that so?" She glided closer, her perfume carrying hints of exotic flowers. "Then perhaps you should show me." "It would be my pleasure," he murmured, closing the distance between them. "Though I should warn you, humans can be quite intense." "I'm not afraid of intensity, Captain," she breathed, her fingers trailing along his chest. "I've conquered worlds." "Conquering worlds is one thing, Your Majesty," he said, gently taking her hand. "But this will conquer you." Their lips met in a searing kiss, and Justin felt the Queen's initial surprise melt into eager curiosity. As his hands began to explore, her soft gasps of pleasure echoed through the chamber. A particularly loud moan caused the guards to burst through the door, weapons drawn. They froze at the sight of their queen in such an intimate embrace. "Out!" Ariadne commanded, her voice breathless but authoritative. "And if anyone disturbs us again, they'll spend a week in the dungeons." The guards retreated hastily, leaving Justin and the Queen alone once more. They looked at each other and burst out laughing. "Now," Ariadne purred, pulling him toward her massive bed. "Where were we?" "About to make history, Your Majesty," Justin replied with a wicked grin. "The first human-alien cultural exchange of its kind." "Then by all means, Captain," she said, her eyes darkening with desire. "Proceed with the lesson." The morning light filtered through the crystalline windows of Queen Ariadne's chambers, casting prismatic patterns across the luxurious furnishings. Justin Sterling lay awake, watching the play of colors dance across the Queen's vibrant green skin as she slumbered peacefully beside him. Last night had been transformative, to say the least. "You're staring," Ariadne murmured without opening her eyes, a small smile playing at her lips. "Can you blame me?" Justin traced a finger along her shoulder. following the subtle patterns that seemed to shimmer beneath her skin. "You're quite literally glowing." She opened her eyes then, emerald meeting ice blue. "A peculiarity of my species. Our bioluminescence responds to intense emotions." "Is that what we're calling it now?" He grinned, propping himself up on one elbow. "You were right," she admitted, stretching languorously. "About everything. The climax is no myth. I've never experienced anything like it. My people, we've been so clinical about physical intimacy for so long, we forgot what it means to truly feel." Justin watched as she rose from the bed, wrapping herself in a diaphanous robe that did little to conceal her graceful form. "Your Majesty, Ariadne," she corrected him. "After last night, I think we're well past titles, don't you?" "Ariadne," he amended, savoring the way her name felt on his tongue. "What happens now?" She turned to face him, her expression thoughtful. "Now, Captain Sterling, we have breakfast, and then perhaps more research into this fascinating human phenomenon." A knock at the door interrupted them. "Your Majesty?" called a hesitant voice. The morning council awaits." Ariadne sighed, her royal mask sliding back into place. "Inform them I'll be delayed. I have an important diplomatic matter to attend to." Justin raised an eyebrow as she returned to the bed. "Diplomatic matter?" "Indeed," she purred, settling beside him. "I believe we've only scratched the surface of human-alien relations. There's so much more to explore." Their morning together was spent in intimate conversation, punctuated by tender moments and passionate embraces. Ariadne was fascinated by the human concept of foreplay, of building anticipation and desire. Her people had reduced physical intimacy to its most basic biological function, losing the art of pleasure along the way. "It's not just about the physical sensation," Justin explained as they shared exotic fruits from a floating breakfast tray. "It's about connection, about trust, letting yourself be completely vulnerable with another person." "Vulnerability is not something queens are encouraged to display," Ariadne mused, watching as he bit into a luminous purple fruit. "Maybe that's why this is so powerful," he suggested. "You're not just a queen with me. You're a woman discovering a whole new world of sensation." She considered this, absently licking juice from her fingers in a way that made Justin's breath catch. "My advisors would say I'm being foolish, letting a human affect me this way. And what do you say?" "I say..." She moved closer, her skin beginning to glow with that ethereal light again, "that some things are worth being foolish for." Their kiss tasted of exotic fruit and unspoken promises. When they finally parted, Ariadne's hair was literally sparkling with bioluminescent patterns. "That's new," Justin observed, running his fingers through the shimmering strands. "It's never done that before," she admitted, looking both pleased and slightly embarrassed. "You seem to have quite an effect on my biology, Captain." "Justin," he corrected her with a grin. "After last night, I think we're well past titles." She laughed, the sound like crystal chimes in the morning air. "Very well, Justin. Though I must warn you, my people mate for life. These sensations you've awakened in me, they're not easily forgotten." "Is that a proposal, Your Majesty?" he teased, though his heart beat faster at her words. "Perhaps a hypothesis," she replied, trailing her fingers across his chest, "one that requires extensive testing." The morning council would have to wait quite a bit longer. Later, as they finally prepared to face their respective duties, Ariadne paused in the act of pinning up her hair. "You've changed everything you know. How can I go back to conducting state affairs when all I can think about is this?" Justin finished fastening his stealth suit, approaching to help her with a particularly stubborn pin. "Maybe you're not meant to go back? Maybe you're meant to go forward, showing your people there's more to life than clinical efficiency." "A revolutionary thought," she mused. "The queen who learned to feel." "The queen who learned to live," he corrected, placing a gentle kiss on her neck. A different guard knocked this time, more insistent. "Your Majesty, the galactic ambassador has arrived early." Ariadne groaned, resting her forehead against Justin's shoulder. "Duty calls." "Go be queen," he said softly. "I'll be here when you're done." "Promise? Wild space horses couldn't drag me away." She laughed at the Earth expression, then composed herself into royal dignity. But just before she opened the door, she turned back to him with a mischievous smile. "Perhaps tonight you can teach me more about these human pleasures of yours." As my queen commands, he bowed with exaggerated formality, making her laugh again. As the door closed behind her, Justin reflected that he'd never seen anything more beautiful than a queen learning to feel, and he intended to help her feel everything. The Grand Council chamber buzzed with whispers as Queen Ariadne entered, her skin emanating a subtle glow that hadn't been present before. The 12 male council elders, their own green complexions weathered by age, exchanged knowing glances. Their queen had changed, and they all suspected the cause, the human captain who'd been seen leaving her chambers that morning. "Your Majesty," First Elder Theron began, his ancient voice carrying centuries of tradition, "we must discuss the unusual energy readings emanating from the royal quarters last night." Ariadne settled onto her crystalline throne, her emerald eyes twinkling with barely suppressed amusement. "Indeed, I wasn't aware the council monitored my private chambers. The palace's biosensors detected unprecedented spikes in your bioluminescent output," another elder, Pyrrhos, explained delicately. The medical staff was concerned. "I assure you," Ariadne replied, her skin brightening slightly at the memory, "my health has never been better." "It's the human's influence, isn't it?" Theron pressed, his ceremonial robes rustling as he leaned forward. Captain Sterling." "Justin," she corrected automatically, then caught herself. The elder's expressions ranged from scandalized to intrigued. "Yes, I've been learning about human customs. Their approach to certain biological functions is quite enlightening." "Enlightening?" Pyrrhos sputtered. "Your Majesty, our species has spent millennia evolving beyond primitive physical responses. We've perfected clinical reproduction. There's no need for such barbaric practices." Ariadne's glow intensified, her hair beginning to shimmer with that new starlight effect. "Barbaric? I think not, Elder Pyrrhos. The humans haven't abandoned their physical nature. They've embraced it, elevated it to an art form. They understand something we've forgotten, that pleasure and emotion aren't weaknesses to be engineered away, but gifts to be cherished." Meanwhile, in another part of the palace, Justin was facing his own interrogation. General Lysander, commander of the Royal Guard, had cornered him in the training facility. "Captain Sterling," the massive alien warrior rumbled, his ceremonial armor gleaming, "I believe we need to discuss protocol regarding royal interactions." Justin continued his workout, his muscles flexing as he lifted weights designed for the stronger alien physiology. "Something on your mind, General?" The Queen's vocalizations last night caused quite a stir among the guard. "Several of my men are convinced you were torturing her." Justin nearly dropped the weight, choking back a laugh. "I assure you, General, any sounds you heard were expressions of pleasure, not pain." "Pleasure?" Lysander's brow furrowed. "But our species doesn't—" "Maybe it's time you did," Justin suggested, setting down the weights. "Your people have amazing physical capabilities. Stronger, faster, more enduring than humans. Yet you've denied yourselves one of the most fundamental joys of existence." Back in the council chamber, the debate was heating up. "Your Majesty," Elder Theron pleaded, "at least consider the political implications. If word spreads that you're engaging in primitive physical practices with a human, then perhaps," Ariadne interrupted, rising from her throne with fluid grace, "our people will remember what it means to truly live, to feel, to experience life instead of merely existing through it." Her skin was practically radiant now, her hair a cascade of living starlight. The elders murmured in astonishment. None had ever seen such a display of bioluminescence in their centuries of life. "Look at yourself," she continued, gesturing to their muted, almost gray-green complexions. "We've dimmed our own light in pursuit of cold efficiency, but I've experienced something extraordinary, something that makes every cell in my body sing with joy. Would you deny our people that awakening?" In the training facility, General Lysander was experiencing his own revelation as Justin demonstrated human combat techniques. Techniques that relied on instinct and feeling as much as calculated precision. "You see," Justin explained, helping the general up after a particularly effective move. "Sometimes you have to let go of rigid control to achieve something greater." "Like the Queen has with you?" Lysander asked shrewdly. Justin paused, choosing his words carefully. "What Ariadne and I share, it's more than just physical. It's about trust, vulnerability, allowing yourself to experience life fully. And these climaxes she's experiencing are just one expression of that trust. Justin finished. Though I have to admit, the bioluminescence is spectacular. The general actually cracked a smile. The palace engineers are quite puzzled by the energy readings. They've never seen anything like it. Maybe that's because your people haven't allowed themselves to feel anything like it for generations. As evening approached, Ariadne found Justin in the palace gardens, practicing his combat forms in the dying light. She watched him move, appreciating the fluid grace of his human physiology. "The council is in an uproar," she announced, making him turn. "Apparently, my unprecedented bioluminescent output has them concerned for my health." Justin grinned, approaching to take her hands in his. "Should I be concerned about being arrested for endangering the queen?" "Quite the opposite," she replied, her skin beginning to glow at his touch. "I've ordered the medical staff to begin studying human pleasure responses. For scientific purposes, of course." "Of course," he agreed solemnly, though his eyes danced with mischief. "And will you be personally overseeing this research?" "As queen, it's my duty to be thoroughly involved in matters of state," she murmured, drawing him closer, "though I may require extensive private consultations with my human advisor." "I serve at my queen's pleasure," he whispered against her lips. Their kiss lit up the garden like a supernova. In the shadowy depths of the Emerald Palace's ancient library, Elder Theron convened a secret meeting of the Conservative Council. Holographic displays flickered with data showing the queen's increasingly frequent energy spikes, while traditional scrolls detailed the laws of succession and royal conduct. "This human infection must be contained," Elder Pyrrhus declared, his weathered green skin almost gray in the dim light. "The Queen's activities with Captain Sterling threaten thousands of years of careful biological advancement. Her bioluminescence levels are off the charts," another elder added, projecting a comparison chart. "She's experiencing emotional responses we engineered out of our species centuries ago." Meanwhile, unaware of the plotting below, Justin and Ariadne enjoyed a private moment in the palace's crystalline observatory. The queen sat between his legs, her back against his chest, as they watched the dance of distant nebulae through the transparent dome. "Your skin matches the stars," Justin murmured, trailing his fingers along her arm, watching the patterns of light follow his touch. "I never get tired of seeing you glow." "It's becoming harder to control in public," Ariadne admitted, her hair shimmering with contentment. "Yesterday, I actually sparkled during a trade negotiation just thinking about our morning together." "Did you scandalize the delegates?" "Actually," she turned to face him, emerald eyes twinkling, "3 of them asked for introductions to human diplomats. It seems I'm not the only one curious about Earth's customs." Their laughter was interrupted by General Lysander's urgent arrival. "Your Majesty, Captain Sterling, we have a situation." The general's normally stoic face showed genuine concern as he explained that the Conservative Council had drafted a formal petition to the Galactic Assembly claiming the Queen was compromised by primitive influences and requesting her temporary removal from power. "They can't do that," Justin protested, but Ariadne's expression was grave. "Actually, they can. Our laws state that if a monarch shows signs of mental or emotional instability, the Council can petition for regency." She stood, her glow intensifying with anger. "They're using my physical responses to you as evidence of deteriorating control." "Then we'll fight it," Justin declared, rising to stand beside her. "Show them that embracing emotion makes you stronger, not weaker." Lysander shifted uncomfortably. "There's more. They're specifically citing the nocturnal disturbances. The guard's reports of your vocalizations during intimate moments with Captain Sterling are being presented as evidence of mental breakdown." Despite the severity of the situation, Ariadne couldn't suppress a laugh. "So my crime is experiencing pleasure? Feeling joy? Living fully instead of existing in their prescribed emotional vacuum?" "The Council fears change," Lysander explained. "And you, Your Majesty, represent a fundamental shift in everything our society has built itself upon." "Then perhaps," Ariadne's voice took on a dangerous edge, "it's time for that society to evolve." She swept from the observatory, her skin blazing with determination, Justin and Lysander hurrying to keep up. Palace staff scattered before her radiant approach, many young ones staring in wonder at her luminous display. The queen burst into the library, interrupting the Conservative Council's secret session. The elders recoiled from her brightness, shielding their eyes. Is this what you fear?" she demanded, her voice ringing through the ancient chamber. "This evidence that I'm alive, that I feel, that I've discovered what our species sacrificed in its quest for cold perfection?" "Your Majesty," Theron began, but she cut him off. "Number you will listen. For centuries, we've denied our own nature, stripped away everything that made us truly alive. We called it evolution, but it was surrender. We abandoned pleasure, joy, the very essence of living, all in pursuit of what? Clinical efficiency? Emotional sterility?" Justin watched in awe as she continued, her passionate speech making her glow brighter with each word. Several younger council members were staring at her with undisguised fascination. "Look at yourselves," she gestured to their dull complexions. "We were meant to shine. Our bodies were designed to express joy, to illuminate with pleasure, to radiate love. You call my relationship with Justin primitive? I call it enlightenment." "But the laws," Pyrrhos protested. "The laws were written by beings who feared their own nature," Ariadne countered. "I am your queen, and I choose to embrace mine. More than that, I choose to show our people what they've been denied." She turned to Justin, pulling him into a passionate kiss that lit up the library like a solar flare. When they parted, several younger council members were actually glowing faintly themselves, as if responding to her display. "Your Majesty, wait," one of them stepped forward, his skin showing the first hints of luminescence in centuries. "I withdraw my support for the petition." One by one, others followed, their complexions brightening as they rejected the Conservative Council's motion. Even General Lysander's stoic features showed a slight gleam. Elder Theron looked around in dismay as his support crumbled. "This is madness. We cannot simply abandon generations of careful breeding and control." "Not abandon," Ariadne corrected, taking Justin's hand. "Transcend. Humanity hasn't conquered their physical nature. They've mastered it, celebrated it, turned it into an art form. It's time we learn from them." "Starting with these climaxes?" Pyrrhos asked, unable to hide his curiosity. "Among other things," Justin replied with a grin. "Though perhaps we should begin with something simpler. Your Majesty, may I have this dance?" As Justin led Ariadne in a traditional earth waltz, their movements fluid and intimate, the watching council members began to glow brighter. The Queen's radiance reflected off the crystal walls, creating a light show that would be talked about for generations. "You realize," she whispered in his ear as they danced, "you've just helped start a revolution?" "A revolution of pleasure," he murmured back. "Though I have to admit, the bioluminescence gives you an unfair advantage in winning hearts and minds." "Then I suggest you help me make the most of it," she purred, her skin brightening at his touch. "After all, we have an entire species to reawaken." "As my queen commands," he replied, drawing her closer as they danced, their combined glow casting shadows that seemed to dance with them. The newly established Academy of Emotional Integration occupied an entire wing of the Emerald Palace, its crystalline walls specially designed to enhance and reflect bioluminescent displays. Justin stood before a group of curious alien diplomats from various species, all drawn by rumors of the remarkable transformation in Ariadne's kingdom. "The human approach to pleasure isn't just about physical sensation," he explained, gesturing to holographic displays of neural patterns. "It's about connection, vulnerability, and trust. These emotions enhance rather than diminish diplomatic relations." In the front row, a delegation from the Stellar Concordat leaned forward, their iridescent scales shifting with interest. "Is it true, Yasuxo," their ambassador asked, "that Queen Ariadne's bioluminescence now exceeds all recorded measurements?" "Perhaps a demonstration would be helpful." Ariadne's voice rang out as she entered the chamber, her radiance causing several delegates to gasp. She approached Justin with deliberate grace, her skin brightening with each step. "Your Majesty," he bowed playfully, "I wasn't expecting you until the evening session." "The Galactic Assembly adjourned early," she replied, trailing her fingers along his arm. The contact sent waves of light rippling through her skin, drawing appreciative murmurs from the audience. "Something about being distracted by reports of our kingdom's cultural awakening." The Stellar Concordat ambassador's scales shifted to match Ariadne's glow. Fascinating. Our species has always believed emotion enhanced diplomatic relations, but we've never seen such physical proof. Proof indeed, came Elder Theron's voice as he entered, with several younger council members, all showing varying degrees of luminescence. Our society is experiencing an unprecedented renaissance. Trade agreements have increased by 40% since we began incorporating emotional awareness into negotiations. The ability to feel and express pleasure, Justin added, drawing Ariadne closer, creates trust between species. It's hard to maintain hostile intentions when you're literally glowing with joy. As if to demonstrate, he spun the queen into an impromptu dance move, causing her to laugh and flash brilliantly. Several delegates began unconsciously swaying to the unheard rhythm. Later in their private chambers, Ariadne collapsed onto a lounger, her glow dimming to a comfortable warmth. 3 more species requested permanent diplomatic ties today. The Galactic Assembly is calling it the Pleasure Revolution. Justin joined her, pulling her feet into his lap for a massage. And how is my revolutionary queen handling her new role as the galaxy's pleasure ambassador? She purred as his fingers worked their magic, her skin shimming in response. It's exhausting, actually, maintaining royal dignity while experiencing these incredible sensations. I never knew feeling could be so demanding. Having second thoughts. Never, she turned to face him, her emerald eyes intense. But I am learning to balance. This morning, during the Trade Council, I had to excuse myself 3 times just because thoughts of you made me light up like a supernova. Justin grinned, remembering the guards' panicked faces when they'd first discovered the true cause of their queen's vocal expressions. At least they've stopped breaking down the door every time you get excited. Now they just blush and glow themselves, she laughed. Did you know General Lysander has been secretly attending your basic pleasure appreciation classes? Really? The stoic general himself? Apparently he's developed quite an interest in human martial arts, and the instructor who teaches them, the academy, had expanded beyond mere pleasure studies, incorporating all aspects of emotional integration into daily life. Combat training now included understanding one's emotional responses, while diplomatic courses taught the art of emotional honesty in negotiations. The Conservative Council is even coming around, Ariadne continued, her hair sparkling as Justin's hands moved higher. Elder Pyrrhos actually smiled yesterday. It caused quite a stir. Speaking of stirring, Justin murmured, leaning closer, we have 2 hours before the evening reception with the Nebula Alliance. Their passionate embrace was interrupted by an urgent knock. Your Majesty, called a guard's hesitant voice. The Praetorian Empire's delegation has arrived early. They're quite interested in your new diplomatic methods. Ariadne groaned, resting her forehead against Justin's chest. On duty calls, my love, though perhaps we can give them a practical demonstration of human-alien cooperation. Careful, Your Majesty, he teased, helping her up. We don't want to start an interstellar incident. Too late, she smirked, straightening her royal attire. The Andromedans are already composing epic poems about the human who taught a queen to feel. Together, they made their way to the diplomatic reception hall, their natural intimacy causing both their bodies to glow, hers with bioluminescence, his with the subtle flush of desire. The assembled delegates watched in fascination as the couple demonstrated the perfect balance of royal dignity and uninhibited joy. The Praetorian ambassador, a towering figure of metallic scales and sharp angles, approached first. We have observed your kingdom's transformation with great interest, Your Majesty. Our own species has long suppressed emotional expression in favor of logical efficiency. As did we, Ariadne replied, her glow brightening as Justin's hand found the small of her back, until we learned that efficiency without emotion is like a star without light, technically functional, but missing its essential nature. And these pleasurable sensations, they do not interfere with rational thought. They enhance it, Justin explained. Emotion and logic aren't opponents, they're dance partners. Each makes the other more beautiful. As if to demonstrate, he led Ariadne in a slow turn, their movements perfectly synchronized. Her bioluminescence creating patterns that seemed to mirror the music, now playing softly in the background. The Praetorian delegation's metallic scales began to resonate in harmony with Ariadne's light display, creating an unexpected symphony of sensation that left everyone in the room swaying slightly. Perhaps, the ambassador said thoughtfully, It is time for our empire to consider dancing lessons. The Great Hall of Universal Harmony, the most prestigious venue in the Galactic Assembly, had never witnessed anything quite like this. Queen Ariadne stood at the center of the vast amphitheater, her bioluminescence creating patterns that danced across the crystalline walls while Justin conducted Earth's first interstellar symphony orchestra, a revolutionary blend of human music and alien bioresonance. The Praetorian delegation's metallic scales hummed in perfect harmony with the string section, while the stellar concordance representatives added shimmering overtones that complemented the woodwinds. Even the traditionally stoic Nebula Alliance members were swaying, their plasma base forms pulsing in rhythm with the percussion. "This is what we've been missing," Ariadne addressed the assembled representatives of 1,000 worlds. "Not just pleasure in its physical form, but the joy of creative expression, the ecstasy of artistic communion. Humanity didn't just teach me about Climax, they showed us how to make the universe sing." Justin caught her eye from the conductor's podium, his knowing smile making her skin flash with remembered passion. The audience gasped as her spontaneous light display perfectly matched the music's crescendo. "You see?" she continued, her voice carrying the same melodic quality as the orchestra. "We are all instruments in the great symphony of existence. For too long, many of our species chose to play only one note, the cold tone of logic and efficiency. But humans? They taught us to play every note, to embrace the full range of our emotional orchestra." The performance reached its peak as Ariadne joined Justin on the podium, their natural chemistry creating a spectacular light show that merged with the music. The entire hall resonated with pleasure, each species expressing joy in their unique way. Bioluminescence, harmonic resonance, plasma fluctuations, and countless other manifestations of delight. Later, in their private diplomatic suite, Justin helped Ariadne out of her formal regalia. "You literally brought down the house, Your Majesty. I've never seen the assembly so moved." "Moved is an understatement," she laughed, her skin still shimming with afterglow. "The Andromedans are already calling it the Great Awakening." 3 more empires requested immediate cultural exchange programs. And the Conservative Council? Elder Theron actually danced, in public, with a Praetorian ambassador. She collapsed onto their bed, her hair creating patterns of starlight on the sheets. "The galaxy is changing, Justin. All because you showed me that pleasure wasn't a myth." He joined her, trailing his fingers along her luminous skin. "I merely opened the door. You're the one who invited the whole universe to dance through it." Their intimate moment was interrupted by an urgent communication from Earth. The human government, having observed the spectacular success of Ariadne's cultural revolution, was proposing an unprecedented alliance. They wanted to establish a joint human-alien Academy of Sensual Arts and Sciences. "They want us to teach at the Academy," Justin read, his eyes widening. "Both of us. Apparently, we're being called the Pioneers of Pleasure." Ariadne's laughter lit up the room. If they only knew how it all started, with a queen's curiosity about a mysterious human phenomenon. "And now look at us," he gestured to the holographic news feeds showing celebrations across the galaxy. "We've started an interstellar revolution based on the power of pleasure." "Speaking of pleasure," Ariadne purred, her skin beginning to pulse with that now familiar glow, "we have 2 hours before the Galactic Council reconvenes." Their passionate embrace was interrupted by yet another urgent message. This time from the Praetorian Empire. They were requesting immediate consultation on implementing human pleasure protocols into their diplomatic corps. "The universe has terrible timing," Justin groaned as Ariadne reluctantly pulled away to read the message. "Patience, my love," she smiled, her skin flickering teasingly. "We have all of eternity to explore our personal pleasure revolution. Right now, we have a galaxy to enlighten." The next day's assembly session was dedicated to establishing the new Galactic Pleasure Protocol, a framework for incorporating emotional and sensual awareness into interstellar relations. Representatives from every major species shared their experiences with rediscovering their capacity for joy. The Praetorian ambassador demonstrated how their metallic scales could now create complex harmonies expressing emotional states. The Stellar Concordant delegation performed a traditional mating dance that had been forgotten for millennia. Even the energy-based Nebula Alliance showed how their plasma forms could synchronize in expressions of shared pleasure. This is more than just diplomatic revolution, Ariadne addressed the assembly. This is the next step in galactic evolution. We're not just teaching species how to feel pleasure. We're showing them how to be fully alive. Justin watched from his position beside her, marveling at how far they'd come from that first flirtatious conversation at a royal banquet. His queen now literally glowed with confidence and joy, her every movement a testament to the power of embracing one's full nature. The human concept of climax, she continued, her skin brightening with passionate conviction, is more than just a physical phenomenon. It's a metaphor for reaching our highest potential, for experiencing life at its peak. And thanks to humanity's wisdom, we're all learning to climb that peak together. The assembly erupted in a spectacular display of multi-species appreciation, a symphony of light, sound, and pure joy that would be remembered for generations to come. The Emerald Palace's private gardens had become a sanctuary for Ariadne and Justin, amid the whirlwind preparations for the first festival of universal pleasure. Here beneath the bioluminescent flora that had evolved to match their queen's newfound radiance, they could simply be lovers rather than galactic revolutionaries. "Remember when you thought Climax was just a myth?" Justin teased, watching Ariadne's skin shimmer as he traced patterns along her spine. They lay on a floating platform among the garden's crystalline trees, enjoying a rare moment of privacy. She purred, her hair creating cascading waves of light. "Now I'm teaching an entire galaxy how to experience it, though none quite as thoroughly as you've taught me." The upcoming festival had transformed the capital into a celebration of sensual awakening. Every species had contributed their unique expressions of pleasure. The Praetorians' harmonic resonance chambers, the Stellar Concordate's empathic dance pavilions, even the Nebula Alliance's plasma-form meditation spheres. "The Conservative Council's latest report is quite amusing," Ariadne mentioned, rolling over to face Justin. "Apparently, the kingdom's productivity has increased by 300% since we introduced emotional integration." "Turns out happy people work better," Justin grinned, leaning in to kiss her glowing shoulder. Who would have thought? Their intimate moment was interrupted by a soft chime. Not an urgent summons this time, but a reminder of their scheduled appearance at the festival's opening ceremony. Ariadne sighed contentedly, stretching like a satisfied feline. "Duty calls, my love," she murmured. "Though perhaps we could make the ceremony more interesting." Justin recognized the mischievous glint in her emerald eyes. "What did you have in mind, Your Majesty?" Hours later, the assembled dignitaries of 1,000 worlds watched in awe as their host demonstrated the ultimate integration of pleasure and protocol. Ariadne and Justin performed the traditional royal blessing, but with a distinctly human twist, their every movement a dance of barely contained desire, their natural chemistry creating spectacular light shows that put the festival's artificial displays to shame. The universe began in light and pleasure. Ariadne addressed the crowd, her skin pulsing with joy. The first stars danced into being, galaxies spun in eternal embrace, planets courted their moons with gravitational seduction. "We didn't invent pleasure, we merely remembered what the cosmos has always known." Justin stepped forward, taking her hand. "Humanity didn't bring anything new to the galaxy, we just reminded everyone of what they'd forgotten. And that feeling deeply is not a weakness, but the greatest strength of all." Their demonstration of this principle, a passionate kiss that sent waves of light rippling through the crystalline architecture, inspired spontaneous displays of affection across species. The Praetorian scales sang love songs, while the Stellar Concordate's delegates performed ancient courtship dances. Even the plasma-based Nebula Alliance members merged their forms in expressions of pure joy. Later, in their private suite high above the celebrations, Ariadne and Justin watched the festivities continue below. The city had become a symphony of light and sound, each species contributing their unique expression of pleasure to the universal chorus. "We've created something beautiful," Ariadne observed, her head resting on Justin's chest. "Not just between us, but for everyone." "You did most of the work," he replied, running his fingers through her starlit hair. "I just showed you the door." And what a door it was," she purred, her skin brightening at the memory. "Though I seem to recall you did more than just show." Their playful banter was interrupted by a soft knock. General Lysander, looking distinctly uncomfortable. "Your Majesty, Captain," The Andromedans are requesting a private demonstration of human pleasure techniques. Justin couldn't help laughing at the general's expression. Still not used to the new diplomatic protocols, Lysander. With respect, Captain, I'm still adjusting to our queen glowing like a supernova whenever you enter a room. Ariadne dismissed him with a graceful wave, her skin already beginning to pulse with anticipation. Tell them we'll provide a suitable demonstration tomorrow. Tonight, she turned to Justin with undisguised desire. I require a private refresher course. The festival continued for 7 days and nights, each more spectacular than the last. Species that had once been bitter enemies now shared pleasure chambers, their ancient hatreds dissolved in waves of mutual ecstasy. Trade agreements were sealed with kisses, peace treaties celebrated with intimate dances, and cultural exchanges took on entirely new meanings. On the final night, as the twin moons rose over the capital, Ariadne and Justin stood before the assembled galaxy to perform the ceremony of eternal light, a ritual they had created combining human passion with alien bioluminescence. Look how far we've come, Ariadne whispered as they prepared to begin. From a queen who didn't believe in Climax to the leader of a pleasure revolution. And we're just getting started, Justin replied, pulling her close. After all, we have an entire universe to teach about love. Their ceremonial dance began slowly, building in intensity like the pleasure they had first discovered together. As their movements became more intimate, Ariadne's bioluminescence reached new heights, creating patterns that would be studied by artists for generations to come. The assembled dignitaries watched in wonder as human and alien demonstrated the perfect fusion of physical and emotional ecstasy. This was more than diplomacy, more than revolution. It was evolution itself, the next step in galactic development. The day of the Royal Union ceremony dawned with unprecedented splendor. The Emerald Palace's Grand Cathedral had been transformed into a living testament to the pleasure revolution, its crystalline walls specially engineered to amplify and reflect both Ariadne's bioluminescence and the harmonic resonances of their gathered guests. Justin stood before a mirror in his preparation chamber, adjusting the ceremonial stealth suit that had been modified to incorporate both human and alien design elements. The same suit he'd worn at that fateful banquet, now enhanced with crystalline threads that would interact with Ariadne's light displays. Nervosen, Capitan? General Lysander asked, his own skin showing the faint glow that had become common among their species. About marrying the most radiant queen in the galaxy? Justin grinned. Never. Though I am curious about this eternal bonding ritual she's planned. The ceremony would combine Earth's traditional wedding vows with the alien species' ancient binding rites, creating something entirely new, much like their relationship had done for the galaxy. In her own chambers, Ariadne prepared with an entourage of attendants from various species. Her wedding gown was a masterpiece of bioengineering, designed to enhance her natural luminescence while incorporating elements from human bridal traditions. I never thought I'd see this day, Elder Theron admitted, his once dull complexion now showing subtle patterns of joy. A queen of our people, joining with a human in the old ways. The old ways with some new improvements, Ariadne corrected, her skin already pulsing with anticipation. After all, that's what Justin taught me, and that tradition and pleasure can dance together. The ceremony began with a symphony of light and sound. The Praetorian delegation's harmonic scales created the wedding march, while the Stellar Concordat's representatives performed an ancient blessing dance. The Nebula Alliance members formed a canopy of swirling plasma above the gathering. Justin waited at the altar, his breath catching as Ariadne appeared. Her entrance caused a collective gasp. She wasn't just glowing, she was radiating pure joy in waves that touched every being present. Her gown seemed to capture and amplify her light, creating patterns that told the story of their love in luminescent symbols. I once thought the climax was a myth, she began her vows, her voice carrying both royal authority and intimate tenderness. You showed me it was just the beginning. Every moment with you has been a new peak of pleasure, a higher summit of joy. What? You taught me that pleasure isn't just physical, Justin responded, taking her glowing hands in his. It's the light in your eyes when you laugh, the way your skin dances with happiness, the pure joy of discovering the universe anew through your wonder. The traditional binding ritual began, but with a distinctly sensual twist. As the ancient words were spoken, their bodies began to respond to each other's proximity. Ariadne's bioluminescence synchronized with Justin's heartbeat, creating a display that drew appreciative murmurs from the assembled guests. Through this union, Elder Theron proclaimed, his voice carrying unexpected emotion, we witnessed the perfect fusion of tradition and transformation, the joining of two beings who taught a galaxy how to feel again. The moment of their first kiss as a married couple created a light show that would be remembered for generations. Ariadne's joy manifested in waves of pure radiance that triggered sympathetic responses throughout the gathering. The Praetorian's scales sang in perfect harmony, the stellar Concordat delegates began to glow, and even the plasma-based Nebula Alliance members pulsed with shared pleasure. At the reception, representatives from every major species presented gifts that celebrated the union of pleasure and protocol. The Andromedans performed an epic poem about their love story, and while the Praetorian Empire unveiled a harmonic chambers designed specifically for human-alien intimacy. Look what we've created, Ariadne whispered to Justin as they danced, their bodies moving in perfect synchronization. Not just us, but this whole new way of being. The galaxy will never be the same. It's better, he murmured back, pulling her closer. You've shown them that pleasure isn't just about physical sensation. It's about connection, trust, and love. Their dance became more intimate, their natural chemistry creating spontaneous light displays that had the guests swaying in sympathetic rhythm. The conservative council members, once so opposed to their union, now watched with obvious approval as their queen demonstrated the perfect balance of dignity and desire. As the celebration continued into the night, Ariadne and Justin slipped away to their private chambers, now enhanced with technology from every major species, designed to amplify and celebrate their unique connection. Ready for the ultimate climax, Your Majesty? Justin teased, helping her out of her ceremonial gown. My love, she purred, her skin already beginning to pulse with anticipation. We're just getting started. After all, we have an eternity to explore new peaks of pleasure. Their wedding night became legend, not for any scandalous details, but for the spectacular light show visible from orbit. The entire palace seemed to pulse with their joy, creating patterns that inspired artists across the galaxy. In the years that followed, their union became more than just a political alliance or a personal love story. It became a symbol of the galaxy's transformation, a testament to the power of pleasure to bridge differences and create something entirely new. The queen who once thought Climax was a myth became the leader of a universal renaissance, with her human husband by her side. Together, they continued to teach, to explore, and most importantly, to love, proving that the greatest pleasure of all was simply being together.